Wednesday evening Bible study of First Baptist Church of Kimberling City. We hope you enjoy this Bible study and gain a deeper understanding of God's Word. Now, here's Pastor Jeff Hardy.
All right, okay. All right. Loud. Where's Gary? Huh? Oh, they can hear me across the road. That's still hot. All right, seems like it's been forever since we've been in our Bible study, but it's been, I think, 2 weeks. I think we're good till May. Then the first couple of weeks of May, there are children's programs, the way I understand, the first Wednesday and the second Wednesday night in May. So we'll get through this eventually, but we're getting into some really good stuff. Tonight we're going to talk about honesty, and we're going to talk about revenge and anger and all these things. In case you haven't been with us, we're in Matthew chapter 5 looking at Sermon on the Mount, the greatest sermon ever preached. Jesus is teaching this to his disciples, and there's a crowd that has gathered with them, listening in to what he's saying. So he's beginning, while he's talking to his disciples, he's also speaking to those who were interested or just kind of hanging out to find out what they could. We've talked about murder, that it begins in the heart. We've talked about adultery. We've talked about marriage. So let's begin tonight in verse 33, chapter 5, the book of Matthew. And here Jesus is talking about taking an oath. What is an oath? Anybody? Give me a, Promise? Yeah. Give me an example of an oath. Believe it or not, I can't hear you, Mike.
Oath of enlistment or the oath of enlisted for a military purpose.
Right. We take oaths when we enlist, right? But what is an oath? Is it not something that we do to strengthen the words that we say, the acts that we do? And Jesus begins this. He is not forbidding us to make vows and promises, but you're going to see when we get through this that he is talking more to us about being truthful. Listen, verse 33. Again, you've heard that it was said of old, in other words, in the Old Testament, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform your oaths to the Lord. Old Testament settings, the rabbis taught that if you made an oath and did not invoke God's name, the Lord's name, then that oath could be broken. It was a loophole. I mean, it was just something they would, the rabbis were Pharisees were trying to find a way out of all of this. And here we find that. And here Jesus says, you heard it said of old, but shall perform your oaths to the Lord. This is found in Leviticus 19, Numbers 30, Deuteronomy 23, all of these, where Jesus is giving the listeners, he's telling them of what they were taught. Now, he is not going against taking an oath. I've heard a lot of people say, well, we're never to take an oath. That's not what Jesus is teaching here. Some people will go to a court and they will ask them to take an oath as they get on the stand. Jesus is not forbidding that at all. This teaching has to do with a personal relationship one-on-one with individuals, okay? Please understand that he's talking about individual relationships, like he's going to in the next part also. So, the legal loopholes the Pharisees were, like I said, was just so that if you called on the name of the Lord, then that was binding. But here's what they did. They began to play games with that. Look what Jesus says in the next. But I say to you, do not swear at all, neither by heaven, for it is God's throne, by earth, for it is his footstool, by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king, nor swear by your head, because you cannot make one hair white or black. Now, what Jesus is saying here, what they would do, they would pretend to invoke God's name. By that they would say, well, I promise you under Jerusalem, by the name of Jerusalem, or on earth, I promise you, according to earth, they would use words that indicated God, but they never did use God. That way they could come back and say, hey, no, you misunderstood. I didn't invoke God's name. I said upon earth. It was a loophole to get out of. Now, okay. In that loophole, there were some things that went without saying. Why would you have to have an oath? Jesus says, don't swear at all. Do not swear at all. Don't take it up. You shouldn't listen. We should not have to strengthen our words by taking an oath. Because when we take an oath, that oath weakens the truth. Let me show you. Hey, I promise I'm telling you the truth. Does that mean you weren't telling me the truth somewhere else? You see the comparison? Cross my heart, hope to die, stick a needle in my eye kind of thing. When we take an oath, it indicts us of telling untruths in personal relationship. We hear that all the time. We're guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. And most of the time we don't say, I don't think, we say it to strengthen our words. It's just a common saying that we may do. But the truth of the matter is, as Jesus says in verse 37, he keeps it real simple. He says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. If you have to encourage someone to believe you, it's probably because either they have been told an untruth before or you have been telling untruths before. Let your yes be yes, your no be no. That's pretty simple, isn't it? Can you imagine what it would be like if everybody did that? Sir, were you speeding? Yes. I was. No excuse, I was. There would be no need for a court system. There would be just simply, if we would say yes be yes and no be no, what a great place it would be. But we don't do that. We try to. I'm telling you the truth. If he does this, it's like, well, okay. Why haven't you been telling the truth all along? Now, Jesus says in the last part of that, he says, for whatever is more than these is from the evil one. Satan is the father of lies. He's got the market cornered on lies. And if he can make us find loopholes in the words we say, he controls our reputation and our character. If he can get us to do those things. Now, any comment on that?
Yeah.
Yes, I heard it somewhere.
Honey, does this dress make me look fat?
Do what?
I said, honey, does this dress make me look fat?
That comes later on, or that was before in the marriage and divorce that we talked about that. Speak the truth. Always. Always speak the truth. The truth will set you free. The truth, you don't have to remember the truth. Did you know that? You don't have to remember the truth. You have to remember the lie, but you don't have to remember the truth. And some people will tell a lie because they can't remember the first lie that they told. And before long, they have no clue.
That's why I have a job.
Let me think about that for just a minute there. But you do not have to remember the truth. You can do that. Let me give you some examples of vows or oaths that we take, and we may not even remember it. Marriage vows. That's an oath. Ordination vows, church membership covenant, signing a contract, a sworn testimony in court. These are oaths that Jesus is not for saying we shouldn't do, but this is a necessity of the public oaths. You know, God permits us to take oaths. Deuteronomy 10:20, Hebrews 6:16. Deuteronomy 10:20 says, "Fear the Lord your God and serve him, hold fast to him, take your oaths in his name." It tells us about that. Jesus took an oath in court when he was standing before Pilate. In Matthew 26, he takes an oath there. Paul calls God as witness to his life and to his works. All through the Pauline literature that we have, many times he says that as God is my witness. You know, he is invoking that. But, so, the idea here, let me give you these applications, 3 applications. Be truthful in your speech, first of all. Say what you know to be true, and say only what you know to be true. No lying, no exaggerating. That puts us out of the fishing realm quite a bit.
About what Jesus is telling. He's telling this to the Pharisees and the Sadducees.
Mm-hmm.
What had they been doing that were on this Jesus?
They were using the loopholes. You know, they were bending the truth maybe, or finding ways out to their advantage, which that's what they did in everything that Jesus addressed. But that's a good point, Gary. Don't exaggerate. Don't tell a white lie. I never understood that phraseology. Thomas Fuller wrote this: "If I speak what is false, I must answer for it. If truth, it will answer for me." Commit yourselves to speaking the truth. If you can't speak the truth, don't speak at all. Bobby, there's your answer. Number 2, practical application, be careful what you promise. I find out that my grandkids have a memory like an elephant. They never forget something. And if you touch on that word promise to them, you better do it. You know, I learned the hard way. You know, you think, well, they won't remember that next time. Oh, yes, they will. Promise. Be careful. Don't promise what you can't deliver. Don't promise that which you cannot certainly deliver. Be careful what you promise. And number 3, be faithful in following through. Whatever you say, do. Let your word bind your character. I'll give you an example and I've never met the lady in person. I've only dealt with her over the phone. We were about 4 or 5 years ago, we were in the midst of I was looking at acquiring some land, not really looking for it. And come to find out, in our neighborhood, this lady owned 29 lots. 29 lots. I just wanted the one next to us that they're building on now. But that's another story altogether. But I talked with this lady. She lived in San Antonio, Texas. She had a partner who was in Branson. Anyway, she ended up owning these 20-something lots. And I said, well, what would you do? Would you sell me the lot next to us? Well, I could. I thought, okay. She said, I really want to get rid of all of them. I just want to get rid of it. I can't manage it from San Antonio. And I said, okay, what do you want for the 29 or so lots that were there? And she said, $15,000. I said, a piece? She said, no, for all of them. 29 house lots in our subdivision for $15,000. I was going to sell anything and everything. So I said, okay, I'll take it. She said, well, there's one problem. I have told my partner he has till such and such date at noon to bring me the money. I said, I understand that. She said, but I'm going to go ahead and send you the contract and we'll get all that worked out because I don't think he's going to bring the money. 5 minutes before noon on that day, she called me. She said, Pastor Hardy, you're not going to believe this, but he just walked in with the money. I already had a signed contract. It was already notarized. I could have taken her to court. And she said, I hope you understand, I have to live up to my word and my commitment. And I have never forgotten that. I said, I completely understand. I hate it, but I understand. I'm glad that it's going through for you. She was committed to follow through on her commitment. We all have to understand that. If you say something, if you show something, Jesus says, do everything that is within you to make sure it happens. And I'm sure some of you have got other stories like that anyway. And yes, they are building on the lot next to us, and I don't own any of those lots. All right. I'll get a sermon out of that. You can wait. Bet on this. Let's look at verse 38, because here he changes subjects again. And I've got to be real careful here because it's hard for me right now to separate our study in Romans with no excuses to Sermon on the Mount. They kind of run together, but I'll do the best I can. This is going to be tough. This is going to be deep, difficult. There's two ways to look at this, or seems to be two ways. Some people will try to explain it away, which takes the power out of what Jesus is saying. Others will just avoid it altogether, this passage. Listen to it. You've heard it that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. This is the law of retaliation in the Old Testament. Lex talionias in the Hebrew. But what it means is that we can give back that which was done to us. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, okay? Or do to others what they just did to you. That was kind of the idea. And Jesus says, you've heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Somebody, you could do to them what they did to you. But I tell you, listen, verse 39. I tell you not to resist an evil person, but whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. Now, the law here, the law was given not for revenge, but it was actually given to prohibit excessive force. The context here, and we want to take it in the immediate context of what Jesus is teaching. And what he is saying here is, You cannot give more to whatever they deserve than what they did to you. The punishment must fit the crime. Okay? That's what he's saying. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. That was the intention of the law. It was to prevent an excessive force or punishment being issued. Punishment must fit the crime. This restrained evil. This kept governments, this kept courts and all evilness from persecuting the individuals. It also took revenge out of the scenario. And this is where it gets interesting. Jesus says, whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. A slap on the right cheek in biblical times was the ultimate insult. As a matter of fact, it carried more punishment than a closed hand slap. To slap somebody on their right cheek with the backside of their hand was the ultimate in insults. And here Jesus says, if they do that, turn the other cheek. Now somebody told me one time, well, what happens if they hit that cheek too? Well, Jesus, you're missing the point here, okay? Jesus is saying that we are not to retaliate, that we are to be examples of radical love over revenge. God will repay the evildoers. Now, he's not saying we're not to protect ourselves, anything like that. He's talking about personal relationships, me, you, that kind of thing, okay? Understand that. He says, if anyone wants to sue you and take away your tunic, let him also have your cloak. To turn the other cheek would indicate to us that we are not lashing out in anger. Guys, he's not talking about self-defense. He's not talking about protecting others who are harming someone. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about personal insults between one to another. Because let's face it, a backhanded slap, yeah, it's going to sting for a while, but that's about it. But the connotation was it is a personal insult to that individual. Turn the other cheek. We have another way of saying it today. Put your big boy pants on and let's go. In other words, don't be insulted by everything. I mean, we live in a time where everyone is insulted by something. And here he's saying, don't let that be. Let it go. And he says also in law, he says if somebody sues you to take away your tunic, tunic was your undergarment. Your cloak was your outer garment. It was against Hebrew law to take a man's outer garment. You could take their inner garment, but you couldn't take the outer garment because that was what they slept on or kept warm when they were traveling or in the field. And Jesus says, if they take you to court and they want your tunic, be willing to give them your cloak also. Go a little bit farther. Which he kind of gets to that in the next one, and when he talks about forced actions. Whoever compels you or orders you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Go the don't just try to get by. Do beyond what is expected of you. It has been, I don't know if it's still the case, but when back in the early 2000s at New Orleans Seminary, the business owners would actually stand in line the day the students came on campus to hire them. And they they were asked by the New Orleans paper why that was. They said, because they will do beyond what is expected of them. They had that reputation. And that's what Jesus is here saying. He says, go the extra mile. Do more than what is expected. Then finally, verse 42, give to him who asks you, and from him who wants to borrow from you, do not turn away. People will say, well, Pastor, when you know people will come and they're wanting food pantry or this and that, and you know they're going to go out and they're going to sell it or they're going to take it back, try to get money for it and buy booze or dope or whatever. Why do you let them have it? Because I am not responsible for what they do after I give it to them. I am only responsible to give them if I have the ability to give to them. And that's what Jesus is saying here. Don't turn them away. Be willing. So there's three applications. Practice mercy other than justice. Go beyond what is required. And trust God with the results. That in itself was huge and is huge for us today. Because we want to get back at people. We want to get even. We want them to suffer as we've suffered over and over and over. So what tonight have you learned? Tell the truth and be nice. That's a big summary there. Tell the truth and be nice. Yes.
Turn the other cheek, justice, things like that. What did Christ do in his life?
Mm-hmm. Never once did he lash out.
Never once.
Never once. And if anybody had reason. Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
What did he say? Forgive them.
Yep.
Wow.
The example of mercy. Good point, Gary. Anything else? All right. As James makes his way up here with our prayer list, let me remind you, if you did not get a...
Thank you for joining our weekly Bible study. Remember to tap like and share to help spread God's Word. If you have any questions about this study or about our church, please contact us through social media or through our website at fbckc.com.